Nicholas, Sir Nicholas,
Yeah.
is not to timestamp things, but today is Valentine's Day. And outside of being with my wife and my daughter, I could think of no better person to spend this day with than with you.
Wow.
The past 2+ years have been great. The show is gone to places I never thought it would go, and I'm really proud of what we do. And just because it's Valentine's Day doesn't mean that two men can't tell each other they love each other and
Sure.
share a poem, right? So I wrote a poem for you, Nicholas,
Mm.
and I've been working on it, and I've look, for those watching, I'm not reading from anything. I've committed it right here.
Wow.
So you ready?
You're a little too short for everybody to see your heart, but I knew you were pointing
Yeah.
there.
So roses are red,
Mm.
violets are blue. You called dibs on black tape, so fuck you.
Well done, sir. Well done.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of all ages, the Dorkshire Gooniverse at Geeks Worldwide Radio proudly presents to you the greatest podcasting team in the world. He's the Fry Guy, Nick Friar. I'm your friendly neighborhood backcracker, Dr. Joe, and together we are the TLDR Comic Book Club, baby! Would you like the poem, Nicholas?
I love the poem. When you said violet too, it's every time I hear the word now, it's changed for me forever because I never knew a violet until your daughter. So now I you say violet's blue, is she? Because that's probably a problem if that's the case. But I am doing great. It's good to be back and doing the show. Obviously, our listeners have had no shortage of content, but obviously, we didn't do what's new last week because actually, the good doctor was celebrating young Violet's birthday. How old is she now?
She just turned 6.
6. Okay, so I got to get her another squishmallow next time that I see
Oh,
you. She
is fucking swimming in squishmallows, squashimals. You know what they have? So at Newbury Comics, right, they've got a vast array of just these different size squashmallows. I call them squashimals. Really drives her nuts. Like the big, small, right? But they have these mystery ones, right? They're in a bag, so they have two different sizes. So for her birthday, I got her sort of this big one. It's like there's 5 different ones you can get plus a mystery one. So they show you which 5 you typically get, and there's a mystery one. You open it up, and she got it. It was a sloth, and she loved it. So for Valentine's Day, I went back there today, and I got her one of the smaller mystery ones.
Nice.
That's in a bag, and so she absolutely loves those things. They are soft as hell, Friar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see what you did
there. They make great pillows, by the way. Yeah.
Well, good to know. But I'm more impressed by the fact that she's a fellow Mikey fan. I saw for her birthday she got a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What do you call it?
T-shirt.
Well, T-shirt and birthday cake, right?
Birthday cake. So the birthday cake. She loves the Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, which is fucking terrible, but she loves it. And the design on the turtles is not my favorite, right? They've got sort of like the full-headed bandana look, and there's some weird artistic choices there, but she likes it. And so she said she wanted Turtles birthday cake, so I found a picture of them. There's a great place in West Roxbury called Donna's Cakes. Makes the best fucking cake I've ever eaten in my life. It has been every birthday cake served in this fucking household for the past 16 years. And they do a really good job. You send them a picture and they do it. But this was a little too busy, so I just photoshopped the heads and just made a little nice. Document there, sent it to them, and they did a great job. But yeah, she loves Mikey. That's her favorite. She's a party dude.
So what I really need to do is get her like a Last Ronin poster for her bedroom. That's what she needs. Like one of those really like blood-filled posters.
Yeah, she'd love that.
Yeah, there we go. But of course, Joe is busy with that. And we didn't do what's new, but you guys have had plenty of stuff to listen to because a couple of weeks ago, we actually didn't tell you guys who we were going to be talking to during that what's new, but we were talking to a couple people over at Dark Horse. Then we followed that up with Michael Busuttil, who is the editor of the Masterverse too. So been no shortage of awesome information gathering on our part, Joe. I've listened back to both of them since we last convened. Really enjoyed both of those conversations. I'm just curious if there were any lingering thoughts for you from either one of the two.
Yeah, I should have asked him some more Bluey questions. I'm pissed. I kind of saved that for the end. And
Mm,
no, they were both great chats that we had, and we got some really great insight into the massive verse. What sort of goes into it, what we can expect, how it all ties together without like directly crossing over with each other too. Like it just the whole process is fascinating, and that they've really done something you don't see in comics, right? I think it's a rarity. We saw AWA do it with the Resistance, and now we're seeing Image do it, or at least do a more up-to-date version of it now with the Massiverse by creating this giant shared universe. Like, yeah, Spawn's its own thing, but Spawn's been there for 30 years, right?
hmm
And things like that. So it's not like it's new to them, but like, I don't know, just creating something out of thin air and have it to sort of become this sort of, pardon the pun, massive,
hmm
thing. It's,
Yeah.
it's been wild and a lot of fun to read.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that conversation too, and then the same with the Dark Horse conversation. I look at that one, and it's like we
Yeah.
talked about a lot of stuff, but at the same time, there's so much more that we could have talked about too.
I swear to God, they better fucking greenlight that Cullen Bunn, Cad Bane
Right?
book that I pitched, right?
Yes,
I mean, he
please.
seemed interested, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Daniel seemed
he
interested.
seemed
Yeah.
very interested. I mean,
hmm
that's the guy to do it. And as if we, nice little segue, as we've seen, Cullen Bunn has had a lot of books announced over the past couple of days.
Yeah.
So now he's cooking with gas. He's got some good horror books coming. But
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun talking with them because we've talked with a lot of Image people, a lot of people from AWA. So having a chance to talk to someone from Dark Horse, we got to learn how to properly pronounce. All I can do is call him Stibby now.
Yeah.
Um,
Bartosz Schnipper.
Stibber, yeah.
Yep.
You know how to pronounce his name properly. Some great Witcher talk, some great Snyder talk. Right, we
Yep.
talked about all that stuff. So both interviews, give them a listen. A lot of fun. These are we love talking to creators, but I think this idea you had of this sort of State of the Union and talking with the different sort of studios and executives or editors and whatnot gives us a little bit different perspective, and I think gives us a little bit more insight into the books that we love to read and what we can look forward to in this coming year. And I think last year was a great year for books. I've got a feeling this year already is really kicked off, and I'm really excited for what's going to come out
Yeah,
this
it
year.
really worked out. Like honestly, in the end, too, we wanted to have three State of the Union conversations, and we wound up doing that too. I'm
Yeah.
really pleased. Like with us, you talk about how like proud of what we do and all this stuff. That ended up working out really well, and also specifically on the Dark Horse front too. We've been talking about Star Wars and what are they going to do. We've seen like they started out with some younger audience stuff, but we got more insight, and it seems like there's going to be stuff for kids, and there's going to be stuff for people who are a little bit older too, who maybe want some darker stuff. So very excited for what's to come in the Star Wars front there as well. And of course, if you typically just watch us on whether it's Doc's Twitch stream, YouTube, or maybe on our Twitter at TLDR_pod, you can't find those conversations there. You can only find them by subscribing to our audio channels, whether that's Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Geeks Worldwide Radio, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, all the major podcasts and platforms. I think Pocket Cast is like our number 2 platform, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. But anyways, you can only find it by subscribing there. Make sure you do that and then leave a rating and review if your listening platform allows you to. 5 stars or whatever the highest rating is, and a positive review would be great. If you leave a negative one or not 5 stars, Doc's gonna, you're gonna find out what the meaning of backcracker is, and I'll tell you guys right now, I know it's not a good thing. But we have a couple other things too we want to touch on before we get to catching up and looking ahead to what's new this week. John Lee's friend of the show, who we're going to have on soon because he's doing some stuff again. He has another Kickstarter that launched. I've been building up to the day to Valentine's Day, but I believe it launched on Valentine's Day and then was completely fulfilled within like 4 hours of being launched on Valentine's Day. Right? Was it the day
So
before?
yeah. So it was brag. I was chatting with him today while I was in the waiting room at the dentist's office, and I said, I just wanted to send him a message. Say, hey, I'm pumped that Sig's coming out. I backed it, and I was looking at the when you go on Kickstarter, you can see like, and I'm like, oh, I go, it's awesome that you're 71% pledged within the first 2 days. This thing is really cooking. And he goes, first 2 hours. And I go, oh shit, I misread that. This project was fully funded within 4 hours.
Crazy.
Which is fucking awesome. And there's 24 days left to go. So, there's some great options on there. If you haven't read Sync before and you've heard us talk about it, there's some options where you can get the new book that's coming out, and also get the digital versions will come along with it. So you'll be able to read it all together. They put some really great packages together here, for this book. Some as low as $7 and as high as over 100. I backed brag here, Scrooge McDuck. I backed the $80 one, which I don't typically do.
Right.
But I did it because I wanted to have all the physical copies of
Sure.
this series because I just love it so much. I think it's a great collector's piece. It comes with volume 1 soft cover, volume 2 soft cover. It comes with Dig, the 48-page one shot that they last kickstarted, and it will come with the soft cover for this as well, and then a couple other smaller things. And if you're unfamiliar with Kickstarter, once this thing is funded, a lot of times what creators will do is they'll come up with different like tiers for goals. So if it raises X amount of money beyond the goal, then they'll throw in this or they'll throw in that. So go to Kickstarter, look up Sink Cutthroat by John Lees and Alex Cormack. You can get it digital only, for a very low price, or if you want some of the extra, fun stuff that comes with it, you can back it at various tiers. I'm fucking pumped for this.
This is coming from, I mean, look, I know, I think I'm the only one that's done a Kickstarter or Indiegogo book on the show for a mainline episode. I did the plot holes, which I did get the physical copy for, and then a couple prints with that because it's Sean Gordon Murphy, and I really like his art style and everything like that. I love that story, which you have read as well now. But we don't back a lot of stuff on there anymore. Obviously, there was a big rush and everything, but it's just there's been a lot of issues with that over the past year or so. So
what I tell you, I'm still waiting on 2 books, one from 2019 and one from 2020.
Yeah. So while I understand like not taking that lightly, I hope you all understand, like we're not recommending this, all willy nilly. I understand, like I think the safest thing is always just to do it digitally because then at least you're going to get the story that'll get delivered much more easily. But I mean, with John Lees, we've had on the show, we've talked with him quite a bit outside the show, and very excited to do that. And I'm going to be probably backing at a higher tier as well because I do want these physical copies because we've talked about it, like from a horror book standpoint, like this is one of the best horror comics there is. Like if we ever revisit this subject on #dork, or if we do something on here to make our own list, like that's going to be in that conversation because it's so damn good.
I mean, I've spent the money already. I already own these digitally, right? And
Yeah.
they weren't cheap on Comixology, and I'm getting them again. That's how, like, there's certain things like you want that in your collection. I want Sync in my collection. I want it over here, right next to Something Is Killing the Children and Red Fork and Sarah and Sentient and some of these other Noctera, Public Domain. Some of these other books that I have, indie books, the trade. So
yeah.
Got to catch them all, Nick. Got to catch them all.
There you go. And of course, when we first had John Lees on, it was talk about some of his productions over at AWA, which is where we got to know him. And, we're going to continue to read his stuff. He's got some more stuff coming elsewhere later on. But speaking of AWA, I know you stumbled across a little bit of news. It looks like Fremantle bought a minority stake in AWA to further develop AWA properties into shows and movies, which for those who don't know Fremantle, you're not alone. Joe and I do not. But if you go and look at their site, there's some pretty big names that were on their list of things that they've done. I can't say I saw any comic book or knowingly any books related productions that they've done. They may have had just books that we don't know. No, Joe and I wouldn't read. But there's some big like brands outside of that they've done work on. So it seems like it's a great move. And I think you caught what the first one is on that's on their list.
Yeah, it looks like Devil's Highway is going to be their first AWA book that they're going to put on the docket. And we already know that Chariot, right, is is in production, and I think they got something else too as well.
Marjorie Finnegan.
Yes. It's Marge Bob,
Yep.
Marge Finnegan. Yep. So like AWA's they're cooking with some gas here, and I think that is something that they've wanted to do from the onset of creating that studio. So I'm glad that it's coming to fruition and the wheels are moving there. So I look forward to seeing some of these properties on the big and or small screen.
Yeah, I cannot wait. I think this should be a huge development for them in the end. But anyways, we got to get moving on catching up because we've had so much news to get to. We're not even talking about the DC movies and Marvel movie trailers that we saw recently. So since we last convened, of course, we had a lot of books that came out
Yeah,
last week that Joe,
Batman.
yeah, that we both read. I mean, for me, I'm not going to dig into them, but Spy Superb issue 2. This is a 3-issue miniseries. Could be something more if they want it to be. Second issue was awesome. Can't wait to talk about it on the show. Monarch from friend of the show, Rodney Barnes. First issue of that came out with Image this past week. Promising start. And then Harrower issue 1 from Boom Studios. I have called dibs on that one.
Yeah, fuck off on that one too, by the way.
You know what, Joe? I'm not throwing you under the bus about you trying to change the rules of these things.
I tried, and then I go, and then I said, "Stop being a pussy."
Yes.
First
Well,
come,
you see,
first.
you
I caught myself.
Yeah,
That's
you
the
did.
thing. I admitted. That's the thing about us, Nicholas. Right? I know when I fucked up, and I own it. You're a fucking snake.
Wow, you just lit a fire under my ass. I think you just won too many times. I was like, no, what? Fuck this.
Good.
But the
I'm
one
making
I
a man
did
out of you before your wedding day.
The one I wow, on Valentine's Day, no less. So the one I did want to touch on real quick and mention is Batman Beyond the White Knight issue 7. That had been out for a little bit. Took a little time for me to get around to that one. And the final issue of that one is out this week. There's been some other stuff that I'm reading too because we're trying to, speaking of DC, do other shit, but that's a conversation for another day. What have you been catching up on, Joe?
So I remember when I got this book in the Snyder Draft, Barnstormers. It was the one I was sort of looking forward. I don't want to say looking forward to the least, but it wasn't like high on my list of books. Like I was like right. But I knew it was going to be something because it's Snyder and it's Tula Lote, right? Who might be one of like her art, like her comic book art, you could literally hang in a fine art museum. It is just that beautiful. It is that good. And this has become because I was a little behind on it. This has become a really good fucking book that took a bit of a turn that I didn't see coming. I go, oh yes, that's Scott. That's the Scott Snyder I know, right? Because we knew that Barnstormers was sort of a passion project, a period piece, if you will. And it looked like it was going in a certain direction, and then boom, he adds that awesome, Scott Snyder flair to it. It takes a turn. You go, well, yes, oh, give it to me. So, like, I wasn't expecting that. And so Barnstormers, excellent. That's definitely a must read. Book of Shadows. Know Your Station. This is the first issue I talked about when it came out, and I was like, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. It was really wordy with the narration, and I remember talking about I didn't like. This is the one of those rare times where I really didn't like the lettering in the boxes and all the dialogue. It sort of took away, but it's grown on me, and it's become a really good sort of murder mystery kind of story. This is a book, real quick. This is a book I just picked up because I like the cover. It was sort of like a Red Sonja type, busty broad on the cover. It's called Dawn Attack. I said, okay, why not? I'll give that a go. I've read the first 2 issues. That is fucking awesome. It's sort of like Star Wars meets Conan, Conan the Barbarian. Excellent.
Nice.
Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, issues 1 and 2. That was been pretty good. And then I read, I believe this is from Image. Or maybe it's Dark. I think it's Dark Horse actually. Space Job issue 1, and I read this, and it's kind of got. I don't know if you're familiar with the Orville, which is sort of like a Star Trek spoof. It's done by Scott MacFarlane or Seth MacFarlane, Family Guy, which is a really great show, and it's a really good parody kind of spoof of that genre. So this had this feeling, but this was so fucked up in like a weird way. Like, what the fuck is going on here? That's odd. Like you're introduced to this character, and he's a bumbling fucking idiot, and he's an arrogant fucking idiot, and you think he's going to be the main character, and then he just fucking randomly dies, and you're dealing with this shit with a bunch of fucking idiots, and it's just sort of like what was that? What was that? A horror book I read. I'm like, I don't know why I'm reading it, but it's pulled me in.
Oh yeah, the it was an Image one, right? Vinyl.
Vinyl, yeah, it's like that in the sense of like, why the fuck am I reading this? This is I need to read the second issue. It's that weird and off the walls.
Hmm.
So that one I was like, what the? I'm reading it and half chuckling and going, what is? But I'm like, yeah, I kind of want to read. I kind of want to read more and see where it's going. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice. Okay,
yeah,
interesting. Well, let's get to the new comics hitting shelves this week. Of course, we usually start with Marvel, and take it away, Joe.
20 fucking books, Nicholas.
Ugh.
20. X-Men 19. Wolverine 30, Hulk 12, which is no longer being written by Donny Cates. I believe it is Ryan Otley that has taken
I
over
saw that,
this
yeah.
series.
It's interesting.
Spider-Man issue 5, Fantastic Four issue 4, Star Wars issue 31, Captain Marvel issue 46, Marauders issue 11, Star Wars Bounty Hunters issue 31. Did you call dibs on Nightcrawlers? Is that why it's red?
It's part of no, I didn't call dibs on it. It's just part of the what do you call it? The Sins of Sinister event.
Okay. So
Yep.
Nightcrawlers issue 1, Mary Jane Black Cat issue 3, Avengers Forever issue 14, Invincible Iron Man issue 3, Spider-Man The Lost Hunt issue 4, Wasp issue 2, Extreme X-Men issue 3, Monica Rambeau Photon issue 3, Murder World Moon Knight issue 1. I'm assuming these are all just a bunch of one-offs with different characters.
Yep.
Marvel Voices Wakanda Forever issue 1, and then Avengers End Times Marvel Tales issue 1. Fucking fix it, Marvel. It's real simple. Avengers End Times issue 1. Right? You can put Marvel Tales on the across the top if you want, but keep the fucking pick the title.
Yeah, it's they're getting rather lengthy. Nightcrawlers is part of Sins of Sinister. I'm continuing to enjoy that event, but I did want to dig into Wolverine a little bit. Of course, written by a friend of the show, Benjamin Percy, and we've talked about how he's so good at writing Wolverine, and that has not changed whatsoever. There is actually a series of panels a little bit later on in the issue, probably like the mid third of the issue, and it's just like Wolverine's kind of like, like sometimes Wolverine can be a little bit funny, but like it's in a dark way. And but it's just a very small series of panels that I really enjoyed. Just like a quick moment that was really well done. But really, what we know is going on after issue 29. You are not caught up, but you've read issue 29, right?
I haven't read it. Yeah, I'm dying to read this issue.
Okay. Well, I don't want to spoil anything other than when we know Beast is a problem. We know
Prick.
that is the case.
Real prick.
Seeing it in some of the other X books as well as how I think it was Immortal X-Men too, where it pops up like how he's changed so much because of other relationships. I'll tell you what, man, like what Benjamin Percy has done with Beast is kind of mind blowing because we know he's already kind of turned into like a bad guy in a way, but to see how he's twisted him, I never expected that from Beast. I never thought it would be a thing that I would need, but it's really well done. I've really enjoyed it so far. So I'm surprised by it. Pleasant, very, very much pleasantly, as much as Beast is becoming a bastard. I'm here for it though. It's like more of it please. Like I don't need him to go back to being a good guy as much as there was somewhat of a place. And I also was never really a big Beast fan, so that may be part of it. But I really like what's going on here, and the ante has been upped after issue 30 for sure with Beast versus Wolverine.
Can't wait. Can't wait.
Awesome stuff. Now let's move over to DC. We mentioned Batman Beyond the White Knight. Issue 8 is out this week. That's the final issue of this series. But it is not the end of the Murphyverse. And we'll leave it at that. You guys will figure out once you read
I
it.
haven't read it yet. So,
well, I'll tell you that. Batgirls issue 15. Lazarus Planet Dark Fate issue 1. Danger Street issue 3, Batman Inc. issue 5. I might try and catch up on that one because I like Ghostmaker's at the center of it. I want to read more of that character. It seems like things are getting pretty out of control over there. Wildcats issue 4. I've been reading that one. Batman The Adventure Continues season 3 issue 2. Batman Scooby-Doo Mysteries issue 5. Batman Spawn Unplugged issue 1, which I'm not entirely sure what the hell.
So I bought this. It's just it's the Batman Spawn book that came out a month ago or whatever.
Right.
It's all black and white, and there's no words. It's just Capullo's art. It's awesome.
Interesting.
I,
Oh,
I grabbed it because I go, that's a pretty cool collector's piece.
yeah, that definitely is. Then you got I Am Batman 18. We Are Batman 18. You Are Batman 18. But then lastly, and most importantly, the day has finally come. The return of Swamp Thing Green Hell issue 2. Now,
2 years?
no, I think it's maybe not, but obviously I remember seeing something surrounding this that like there was like a serious thing that happened. I don't quite know. I don't know what it was. It's frankly, it's none of our business. I assume that has nothing to do with like DC like having their restructuring and then Swamp Thing being part of that first chapter. Because if that's what it is, like that's not like that's like just tell us like it had to do with that. Like if it's a serious thing, yeah, like has to do with the creators or whatever, that's a totally different story. But we loved the first issue of this one, and now we got
December 28th, 2021 is when the
okay.
first book came out.
So it has been. So it's like so it's a little over a year is what it's been.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's like again we were like we at some point like we I remember was this no that was a different Constantine book because obviously Constantine Swamp Thing kind of go hand in hand in that first issue. It's been
No,
long enough.
I spoiled it for you immediately.
Yes, you did. Yes, real bastard. I was not appreciative of that one, but been dying to get more of
Yeah.
this. I mean, Lemire's writing this series, and I'm just like, what's going on? It has to be like something serious has to be going on here. And that was the case. Again, don't know what it is, not our business. But I returned to this issue, Joe. Did you go back and read the first one ahead of this?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, and well, because I had to. It's been too long, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to go back and read this. And I mean, I loved it. I loved the first issue, and I love this issue. And I've admittedly never read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, but Swamp Thing has never really been a character I cared about, right?
Right.
It's kind of like he's sort of like DC's Ghost Rider to me, right? Like a little scary as a kid. Was never my cup of tea, so I never read that. I would very much like to go back and read Alan Moore. I believe it was Alan Moore that wrote
Yep.
Swamp Thing.
Scott did too. Snyder. And I
Yeah,
think
right.
Ron V most recently.
So Ron V's, I did read that, and we've talked about Ron V. Love him as a writer, but I think when it comes to his stuff, it's either you love it or it's not your cup of tea. And his Swamp Thing, because Rom can get very, very heady, very meta, which works with a lot of things. Didn't necessarily work for me in Swamp Thing, but this
Okay.
does. Lemire does. He's
Yeah.
made me care about this character.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It's been a really like, and I didn't go back and reread it. So if you haven't necessarily, if you haven't done that, you could get away with it and still be fine as long as you remember the general premise. Remember, Constantine was thrown in the mix later on in the issue. It's been a year, so we're not spoiling things at this point. The artist on this too is Doug Mankey, I believe is how you pronounce the last name. But really good return to the series. Now, this is a Black Label thing, so this is limited. I'm assuming it's 3 issues. I feel like was what it was when it was announced. But the action in here is good. Constantine being in the mix and kind of throwing things off is always, always interesting. There's another character. There's a couple characters actually that are thrown into the mix. One who we're familiar with. One who I can't recall this character ever being mentioned before, but we'll see how that individual's presence, kind of throws things off going forward. But I've liked this, and Swamp Thing is something that we need to talk about addressing in some capacity moving forward.
One of us needs to read one of those books, right?
Yeah,
and
we'll sort that out at some point off air.
And I just love because it's an older Constantine, and I just love that everyone fucking hates him. It's great.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is the way that Constantine should be. Everybody hates him. Swamp Thing hates him as much as anybody, and I would love it if this spawned like a old man Constantine book. That'd be great. Oh my god! I mean, you're printing. I feel like you're printing money. I mean, I don't understand it why Constantine is just. He always seems underutilized, but maybe it's because he only has so much of an audience.
Right.
But anyways, let's move over to Image. Got some big ones over there. Kick us off.
All right. So with Image, we have 8 billion genies. Gunslinger Spawn 17. What's the furthest place from here? Issue 11. I Hate Fairyland issue 4. Nightclub issue 3, which I've been reading and is excellent. Image number 10, Art Brute issue 3, Kaya issue 5, The Last Barbarians issue 1, which I read. Fantastic. Hexware issue 3. You have Torrent number 1 in red. I also read that. I don't remember you calling dibs.
No, I
Uh,
didn't. Did you call dibs on Last Barbarians
I don't know.
before?
Did you?
No,
No.
I didn't because I read it and I was like, I don't think either of us. This is what
No.
happens when we freaking like don't do a solicit because
I
now
know.
we've had this multiple times this month where we're like, did you call dibs or did I call dibs? Like, I don't know, and it's not on the checklist that we have. So no, I didn't call dibs on either one of these. And quite frankly, I was like, Last Barbarians was like all right.
Yeah.
I didn't
I don't know
really.
why it's purple. Did you highlight it purple?
I did,
Did I
yeah,
do
after
that?
the fact. Yeah, you did it,
Oh,
and then
okay.
I added because you didn't know that I had done it.
Oh,
Read
gotcha.
it, and
Gotcha.
then Torrent, I was like, so I didn't. That one didn't do much for me either.
So Torrent did do a little something for me.
Okay, I'll stay off it then if you want to.
Well, it's got next issue, right? Because I was like, for 2/3 of the book, I was like, probably not my cup of tea, right? It felt a little, it wasn't for me. But then the end, oh fuck, yep,
Yeah, the ending
okay,
was good. Yeah.
yep, okay, all right. I'll read the second issue. So it's like borderline dibs,
Okay. Well, no,
borderline dibs.
I'm gonna lay off it because I was like, I wasn't
Yeah,
like, I'm not gonna go and give the second issue a shot. It's just like I felt like we hadn't done, you or I haven't done, or at least I hadn't done a random like image one in a while. It just feels like
yeah.
a
That's
lot
how
of
I
the.
felt, and that's why I wanted to read both of
There
these.
we
Yeah,
go. Yeah, because we just
right.
well, we've had so many that like get like we know the creator already, like just knowing the name. Then we have some where it's like a creator comes on the show, so we're giving it a look. So there's like a lot of that.
Right.
But like you look at some of these other names on here, like I think I read the first issue of Least We Can Do, but that was 6 months ago. That started Three Keys.
Yeah.
Neither of us gave a look. Art Brute. Neither of us gave a look. Kaya,
Right.
you didn't give a look, right?
Nope.
So yeah, so these are the ones that like neither of us have gone in on. By the way, but there's one other book too, obviously that we want to dig in on. But before we do that, Gunslinger Spawn issue 17. Have you read this?
No, don't
Okay,
spoil it.
I am not going to spoil anything, but I need to say Gunslinger Spawn 17 has a spread in there that introduces what I gotta imagine when it was drawn by Brett Booth and when Todd came up with his head, whoever did it first, they thought this is going to be another action figure. Like
Oh, can't wait.
100%. And
Can't
I will
wait.
absolutely pick this thing up. I have to. Like it was so fucking cool. Like Lauren, who doesn't know anything about this title, she knows Spawn, but like doesn't know anything about Gunslinger Spawn other than the figure that I have. I had to show her. Like this is amazing.
No,
And even
nice.
she was impressed by it. So like it's so fucking cool. You got to tell me when you'll know when you see it. You got to tell me when you read this thing.
Yeah, we'll do.
Because I was blown away by it. But anyways, the book that we wanted to dig into a little bit, I was worried that this was the final issue of this because we saw someone on Twitter tweet out like, "Oh, is Dead Lucky issue 6? Is that the final issue of it?" Which Melissa Flores, friend of the show, did clear up that this is not the case. And when you read it, it is very much not the case that this is the final issue of the Dead Lucky because now, again, not getting into specifics of the details, but it's going to be a totally different approach for this character moving forward. And I, for one, am very excited to see how she handles it because I really don't know how it's going to look for her.
Yeah. This, it was a hell of a way to end the arc, right? Right. This was the last book of the arc, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and like I didn't see it coming, which is what I've loved about this book, the most is that like it hasn't been predictable. Like, yeah, the two factions are going to come to a head, but there's been some great okie dokes and some great things that have happened in between. And so, what it's set up to become, is excellent. I think we'll see. I think it's at the end, right? It's setting up Supermassive 2, which we talked a little bit about with Michael
Yep.
Lucentil. So like I said, there's a lot of really great stuff coming up, and this has been, I think for me, if I were to rank my massive verse books, it'd be Rogue Sun, Dead Lucky, Radiant Black, and then
The
kind of
small ones. Yeah.
and take it from there, so to speak. So
Yeah.
I love everything about it. The art continues to be fantastic. The storytelling's
Oh,
fantastic. It's just this is an awesome book.
the action. So I'm really excited for the second arc of BB's story. I really think like this is going to put her in like a less, I mean, maybe it's a more comfortable spot for her, maybe it's less comfortable, I don't know. I mean, the nature of it is not a comfortable situation. But I'm really excited, you know, and for that, Shift being in the mix again, like has potential to be in it more down the line. I love that character, I love his look. He's just a real bastard, but then again, he's got other stuff going on too, which I'm wondering if we're going to get answers, because we're seeing him pop up everywhere timeline wise. Like, is he like, how much is he actually shifting, or is there maybe multiple shifts in the
Right.
mix? But the other thing is too that I wanted to note, like, you know, we talk about like awesome covers on here, quite not a whole hell of a lot, but like we mentioned a little bit. But I just gotta say, the cover A by French Carlamongo, I love just like like the whole thing itself is cool, but just like that action shot of Baby to me is so damn cool. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, if it's the line, if it's the pose. I think the gun fits the look of the character so well too. Just everything about her, like in that shot. There've been like quite a few awesome covers for the Dead Lucky already, but I think this one has to be my favorite one to this point. But yeah, just to, you know, I don't know when the collect edition's coming out. We'll probably let you guys know when that. As long as we know, we'll let you know. But really awesome stuff. And yeah, I think I'm with you in the order of the things. But all the Masterverse stuff has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really has.
All right, then we go to let's go to AWA. There's only one book as usual from them out this week. It is a book that you have called dibs on, Trojan issue 2.
Okay, my pen just died. 1 second.
That's
Trojan
good.
issue 2.
Good,
Yeah,
man. I thought you were writing on an iPad these days. What
I
the hell's
am.
going
Well,
on?
the stylus has got to be fucking charged, dipshit.
Oh, well.
Okay.
You're calling me the dipshit and your pen died for the
Yeah.
one time a week that you actually need that thing? Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Anyways,
Interesting.
yeah.
What was that about you admitting when you do stuff wrong again? What was that?
No, I'll
Yeah.
blame my child for this one. I will throw her under the bus.
Okay. Tell me about Trojan, please.
Yes. So I remember talking about issue 1 when it came out, and it was like you read it immediately, you know, dibs, right? You call dibs. You know it. You did it with black tape, you snake.
Sure.
And so it's dealing with, you know, this world where it's a lot of dark web, a lot of weird fucking shit there. And it revolves around, you know, these two factions of people. You've got, you know, sort of these humans, and then you've got, you know, these group of beings that they're known as fays, or as they refer to themselves as legends, and they're, you know, they're hybrids. They're half human, half fairy, half troll, half, you know, whatever, and they are being oppressed. They are being hunted. They do not belong in this particular society.
Mm.
And we're introduced to a character, and she's trying to, you know, save her people, save the people that, you know, that you know that she belongs to. And we get that reveal at the end of the first book, and so we get a lot of, you know, a lot of exposition in issue 2, sort of describing, you know, the characters, just really like what she's fighting for and why she's fighting, and, you know, why she's okay to die for the cause, because, you know, just it's what all oppressed people, right, you know,
Hmm.
fight for, right, is acceptance, right. And you know, this book is great because, you know, it gets a little dark, but then, like, we got a really great twist at the end of the first, or a big reveal, I should say, at the end of the first issue. But the reveal and the twist that we get at the end of the second issue was fucking bananas. And you
Really?
want to talk about not seeing coming, and you want to talk about going, holy fucking shit.
Hmm.
What? Yes.
Nice.
Yes. Like, this is what AWA does. It's just pure, great, awesome storytelling, you know, book in and book out. You know, 9 times out of 10, Nicholas, I'm so engrossed, you know, in the storytelling from these writers. And who is it doing? Is it Peter Milligan that's doing Trojan?
No, isn't
I
it
should,
Cross?
sorry, Jesus Christ, Joseph. Yes,
Yeah.
Daniel Kraus. He is so good,
Hmm.
you know, at writing comic books. Thank you. Fucking A, Christ. Um, yeah.
I hope he
Um,
sees this, and I hope he
yeah.
tells you how
Well, I
bad you
mean,
should feel.
I do feel terrible.
Awful. You should. You should feel terrible.
I should have known that. It's been a while since we've done the show, Nicholas. Cut me some
Oh,
slack.
you get that rusty that easy. Wow. Jeez,
I
you're
get
working
rusty.
out.
I get rusty real easy. Yeah, there's a joke in there if you're smart enough to pick it out.
Hmm.
Uh, but
My
anyways,
kind of day.
yeah, we're getting a little blue here on the show, but no, Trojan is absolutely fantastic. The art is tremendous. Um, can't recommend this enough. I can't wait to talk about it in more detail on the show. But this, like, the ending of this book again, just made my fucking jaw drop.
Nice, nice. I am excited to hear about that. Maybe we can talk to Daniel Cross at some point down the line. I'm going to go through all these other titles that we have before we get to the last one, because I know there's one other book you want to dig into before we get to the books we want to break down. From Dark Horse, we got Masters of the Universe, Masterverse, issue 1. So that's He-Man stuff for those interested. Resident Alien, The Book of Love, issue 4, and White Savior, issue 2. IDW, we got TMNT 137, TMNT The Armageddon Game, issue 5, Star Trek Resurgence, issue 4, from Skybound, of course, prints through Image, The Walking Dead Deluxe, issue 57, Vault, from friend of the show, Cullen Bunn. Joe is reading this as well. He has dibs on it. Door by Door, Night by Night, issue 3. Talk about a book that I can't wait to hear you talk about so I can read it. Dynamite, we got Red Sonja, Hell Sonja, issue 35. Aftershock, A Foulness in the Walls, issue 1, which I believe is a one-shot from Cullen Bunn. Didn't realize it was a one-shot when I called dibs on it, but whatever. So I guess the dibs doesn't really matter anymore because those are 48 pages. You can't really do a full episode on that. Comixology, Retroverse, issue 3. Frank Miller presents Ronin, book 2, issue 2, and then Frank Miller's Pandora, issue 2. From Millar World, of course, prints through Image. Nemesis Reloaded, issue 2. I talked about Nemesis a little while back on the show. You can read the first volume on Hoopla if you want to. Source Point Press, you got Nightwalkers, issue 2. Good Boy, The Prodigal Son, issue 4. And Zombicide, Day 1, issue 2. And then, Joe, we get to Boom. There is a book that you want to dig into, and I'll let you in a second. But first, we have House of Slaughter, issue 12. Of course, you're reading all things from the Slaughterverse. The Vampire Slayer, issue 11. Eve, Children of the Moon, issue 5. And then Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, issue 1 of 5 from friend of the show, Melissa Flores. Continue to enjoy that series. We also have Grimm, issue 8, which may come up again in a short moment. And there's also a trade paperback that's hitting shelves this week that I may or may not be talking about shortly. Odd on the timing. Did not do it on purpose, but here we are. But then, Joe, you have one more book that you want to talk about.
Yeah, Mosley, issue 2. Absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
This is sort of, again, another... again, I don't want to call it dystopian future, but it's a future where the fucking robots are, have sort of casually taken over and have convinced people that they are, bettering society for them. While at the same time, they've just created a bunch of junkies addicted to power and enhancements. And you've got a great father-daughter dynamic that's happening in this book. And you've got you got the main character Mosley, who is again, he's fighting for what's right. He wants to take down the fucking robots, which I will always fully endorse. Great book, great art. Can't wait to talk about it again. Really fantastic.
I heard about this in an interview on another podcast, and I heard of the creator, I believe is the creator of Farmhand, which you need to talk about in the show at some point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also, Rob Gilroy.
There you go. Yes, Chew as well, too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, man. I heard about that and I texted you. I was like, did you call dibs on this? Because I was like, I'm really hoping he didn't, because I will call dibs on this so fast. It sounds so good. So I am quite jealous. But Joe, another book that I was jealous of that you called dibs on, which was before this turned really into a bit of a war between the two of us. I think it's just before that, is Grimm, which is the book that you want to dig into today.
Yeah, so Grimm issue 8 drops today, and this is another one of those books you read the first issue and you go, yep, dibs. I mean, boom, number 1, you read it. There's a good chance someone's calling dibs on it. This was written by Stephanie Phillips. with art by Flaviano Armentaro, colorist Rico Renzi. Brilliant coloring, mind
Ooh.
you. And equally matched with the lettering by Tom Napolitano.
Hmm.
Some really interesting and really great lettering here. So like all around, like, soup to nuts, this book is a well conceived, well thought out, well, put together book.
Nice.
Synopsis: Jessica Harrow is dead, but her journey has only just begun. Discover the world of the afterlife, where Jessica has been recruited as a Reaper, tasked with ferrying countless souls to their final destination. But unlike the rest of the Reapers, she has no memory of what killed her and put her in this predicament. In order to unravel the mystery of her own demise, she'll have to solve an even bigger one. Where is the actual Grim Reaper? So
Hmm.
I just thought that was a great premise for a book, right? And for a story, and the fact that you've got this army of minions of Grim Reapers, right, makes fucking sense. Like even a fucking little kid knows, like, how can Santa be everywhere at once? Right? He's one person, right? Like, how many people die on a daily basis? How can the fucking Grim Reaper, take all those souls all at once? Right? It makes sense, right? You got a shopping mall army full of fucking Grim Reapers out there just doing the job for the big. He's delegated. It's fucking brilliant. So it's currently, as I mentioned before, it's 8 issues and it's an ongoing series, which I initially thought was a limited series, which to me makes a little bit more sense. I mean, I love that we've already gotten the first arc, which has been collected as a trade paperback and contains issues 1 through 5. But I feel like this definitely has this is a finite story. Like, I don't know, like, this isn't something like where I think like the world of Die, you could come back and revisit and tell another story, maybe with another group of characters, or the same thing with um Once in Future, for example, right?
Hmm.
Like for me, like this story feels like there should be a finite ending, right? But we'll see, right? But it is ongoing. You can collect the first trade paperback, as I just mentioned. But I just love this idea, and right off the bat, I love the way this book starts, because you see a guy sort of crawling away from looks like a really bad car accident, and then that's when we get introduced to Jessica Harrow, who just looks like a normal person, right? Kind of, punk
Hmm.
gothic kind of look to her. Um,
I mean,
and
that's
she informs the guy that he's dead, and he's like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah." And then you look back and you see like the guy, like he's clearly dead in the car, but it was just the way like that decision that was made, that you don't see the dead body right away. You see this person crawling away because it's very much conceivable that someone could walk away from a crash like that. And she's like, "No, no, you're dead." And he refuses to believe it. And for the first several pages of the book, we get this great back and forth between these two characters. Because the guy that was in the accident, he's a little fucking obnoxious. He never shuts up. But he like his like staunch refusal to believe that he's dead. And she takes him. They go on a boat. They go through a literal river of Styx to kind of get to the afterlife. So there's
You mean like sticks, like you mean like the normal river of sticks or actual sticks?
Well, so he goes, "This is the literal river of Styx, right? Because the way that the artist drew it, it looks like they're on a boat going through a river of Styx,"
Oh,
which I
wow.
just
Okay.
thought was a really cool like
Yeah.
choice. Like that's some of the you get a little bit of humor in here like that, and that's one of them, right? Just sort of like that literal interpretation of like the river
Yeah.
of Styx, right? Um, but
Hmm.
we get our introduction to her right off the bat, and it's very interesting. And as it mentioned in the synopsis, like Jessica Harrow doesn't know how she died, and it's a simple thing at first where the guy's like, "Well, I'm dead. How did you become a Reaper? How did you die?" And she gets like really mad. She's like, "I don't know." And he's like, "How do you not know how you died?" She's like, "I literally don't know." And this just sort of starts like this sort of domino effect of storytelling. And so you know they get to the afterlife, which is another great little joke here, where the Grim Reapers, they collect the souls, they bring them to the afterlife. So then they haven't gone to heaven or hell yet. They're in a literal waiting room, and the guy says it. He goes, The afterlife, it's just a fucking waiting room. Like, yeah. So you just see like all these Grim Reapers walking around, and all these, good souls of just like regular people just walking around ready to, go up or down, essentially. And what happens here is that, again, he just refuses to die. He thinks he can escape death. And he steals Jessica's, I can never pronounce this fucking word, scythe, whatever it's called, the thing that scythe, right? That's a very important thing for Reaper. You lose that, you have someone steal that, it's like losing your lightsaber. That's bad juju. You don't let that happen. So Jessica and we introduced a couple of her friends, Marcel and Eddie. They follow this guy, they chase this guy, they go back into the real world, and they catch up with him. But the thing is, they're all dead, so they can't actually interact with anything in the real world. And so she's like, all right, come on, you fucking dipshit, you can't escape death. And then she gets grabbed by a police officer. She makes physical contact with someone in the real world, and this just sets off. This is the shitstorm that gets set off from here on out, that sets up the first arc. So we've got, who really is Jessica Harrow? How did she die? How is she able to interact, in the real world? And this is where we find out that death is missing, and death being gone is a big deal, because now there's this massive imbalance, because there's no one to really regulate. Dead people have to come to the afterlife. They have to get sorted out, and that can't happen with death being dead. And so that concept I thought was really awesome to kind of think about and to read about. And we get really great character development here. We meet a couple other characters along the way. And one of the things I love about this first issue, about this first arc, about this story in general, is that when you think of the Grim Reaper, when you think of death, he's always associated as a bad guy. He's drawn that way. It goes back as early as fucking Charles Dickens, right? And the Ghost of Christmas Future, right? Like, it is a scary, morbid thing, right? But if you think about it, we all die. Death is inevitable.
Wait, what?
Why the hell does he have to be a bad guy? He's just doing his fucking job, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, look at what was it, Sandman, right? She was just like doing her job. God, that was such an interesting version of death too.
Right. So I love that idea that like the Grim Reaper is just a fucking bureaucrat. He's just a dude doing his job. He's a fucking politician, looking, in charge of the afterlife, right?
Is he really doing his job then?
Well,
sorry,
that's a different podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you guys talk about on Pineapple Boys, right?
Yeah, rhinos. But I love that concept. Like, oh yeah, he's there to make sure that there's balance, that the living world and the dying world, stay in this sort of equilibrium, and that now that he's gone, there's chaos that's going to erupt. There's a power struggle that's now happening, in the afterlife, and Jessica Harrow is somehow, mixed up in all of that, and you don't know early on, and it's that unraveling of who she really is, what her role is in this story, and then as we jump into the second arc, just how fucking crazy and nuts that it gets. Like, it's so well done. I think this is my first time reading Stephanie Phillips, and I love her writing. And Flaviano's art is fantastic, and Rico Renzi's color, everything about, like I said, soup to nuts, everything about this book is just exceptionally, well done. And so, one of the things that she does in this book too, at least that she does it in the first arc, is that in the issues, the use of song lyrics, the Doors, the End, for example. This is where the artist and the letterer really, really shine here, because she's using the lyrics of that song to help kind of tell the story of what's going on. And even some of the characters are like, using the quotes, but it's sort of like just woven and feathered in, just sort of like if you were to like close your eyes and imagine like musical notes just sort of floating through the air. That's sort of what's going on with the lyrics here, and it plays such a perfect part of the story, whether it's the Doors or it's Bowie or the Stones or whatever. Because one of the characters, Eddie, he's a Reaper. He's a rock guy, right? He's like a
Nice.
70s rock guy, and I just thought that was unique, and I thought that was really well done. And I enjoyed that. And I think they get away from that in the second arc, because the second arc really um gets more into full-on war mode.
Hmm.
So we get a lot of that build up, and a lot of great reveals and twists and turn happen throughout these first 5 issues. The pacing is great. And like I said, Flaviano's art is fantastic, but I do feel like there's a finite, you know
Hmm.
finite storytelling here. Like, it can only go so far. Like, I don't want this to go. I don't know if I want this to go on for 20, 30 issues. I
Sure.
don't know how it could. I'm sure I'll be dumbfounded I said that about once in future, but like, this feels a little bit more like, give me just a nice tight story here, right?
Right.
So some of the characters, as I mentioned, Jessica Harrow, she's your main character. She's a Reaper. She's a badass, but there's more to her, right? And
Hmm.
and you find that out. There's Adria, who's sort of like middle management. She's like the one step down from death,
Hmm.
and she's a steward of the afterlife, if you will, and she's very sus. Right, you get some very sus vibes from her early on, and her
Uh-huh.
her character arc, through the first few issues alone, let alone the first arc, and into the second, gets really freaking good. And then you have Death, and one of the things I love about Death, as a character, I'm not spoiling anything, but when you get to meet him, it's fucking awesome.
Hmm.
And then Eddie and Marcel, those are sort of two of Jessica's friends that are along with her, for this journey. So this is a great book. I wouldn't necessarily call it horror. I wouldn't necessarily call it fantasy. I don't know what I'd really call it, other than it's really fucking good.
This sounds like this is. Would you call it like the horror adjacent that sometimes I kind of like to label things?
Yeah, because it's got some horror elements to it for sure, right?
Hmm.
But
But
at
it's
the end
not
of the
scary.
I mean, there's like, no, it's not scary like Sync, right? There was never a point where I felt like, I got to read this during the day, or I gotta,
Right.
I gotta put it down. But like, it's got some good imagery. It's got some
Right.
great
No, but that.
skull Reaper kind of
Yeah.
imagery to it. But no, this is not like Red Fork or
Yeah.
Sync or
I don't
Witches
know
or
what the proper term is for that. I just call it horror adjacent now, where it's got like this like scary elements to it, but it is not actually scary. Like
yeah, it's just
but
a
it's like
good
metal.
fucking book.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
metal is the proper term for it, and
maybe.
that's like either way. Like I knew when I first saw like the synopsis for this, you called dibs on it right away. Like before we saw a single page of this, if I'm not mistaken, and I was just like, "Fuck!" Like this sounds like this is my kind of book, and I am not happy that Joe. I mean, you stole it fair and square, but again, I
You
think this
can
was.
read it now. It's great.
Yes, I'm going to. Like this is going to move to the top of my pile. Like I'm not kidding. I've been dying for us to do this episode because this is it just sounds so fucking awesome. I think
This
it's
is
going
a
to be
book I think Lauren would like as well.
okay. I just like this and this sounds like it would be I mean, I know you're saying like have it be finite so it can be like probably more likely to be a movie, but it sounds like you could probably do a show with this too. Just based on
Well,
like
yeah,
the characters you have.
there's like I said, like there's it's ongoing, and like I said, for me, it feels like it should be finite, but that's my idiot brain telling me what I think it should be. But there is
You're not always wrong.
potential, right?
And
There's
you always say
potential
when you
there.
are, right?
I do.
Hmm.
But there's potential there. Like, you could make a TV show out of this. You could make a kick-ass movie out of this. You could,
Hmm.
because but for like this particular character, like I said, I feel the story like 12 issues,
Hmm.
18 issues, like something like that. Like, would
Hmm.
but who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I like
I'm
three
often
arcs.
wrong.
I like you are not often wrong. Don't say that. But three arcs, I always like. I think that's a really like when we talk about like all this stuff now where it's limited like series and whatnot. I know there are plenty of good one arc stories, and there are plenty of good two. But I feel like three is a really nice like
Yeah,
realm to work in because you're
I'd
able to
agree.
get to know some of the characters more and kind of go from there. But I love the sound of this book. Like I just I cannot wait to pick this one up and and get moving on it. So I'm going to grab that trade. I think I picked up the first issue. I picked up one because there was a cover that I thought was really cool, but I am definitely going to grab the first volume of this and then and get moving. I mean, issue 8 of this is out this week, as is, Joe, the book that I am planning on talking about, which I actually unknowingly stole from you, which, I mean, it does make sense that you'd want it because it is a Boom book, all Boom episode. Alice Ever After, written by Dan Panosian, who we've been talking about with Canary a ton. Of course, he's writing Black Tape right now. Love his work. So when I first started doing this, though, I think we had seen some Dan Panosian stuff, but not quite as much. I'm not certain, but either way, like this was like my first. Like I was reading this, not realizing it was necessarily like Dan Panosian, the artist of Canary, and then of course Black Tape stuff came later. Then we got the artist on this. Panosian does do artwork in this when this story takes place in Wonderland. The artist, when they're in London, is Giorgio Spallett, with Cyril Gillerum as doing assists on that artwork in London. The colorist is Fabiana McCullough, and then the letterer is Jeff Eckelberry. So this is a 5-issue series. Like I said, the trade paperback hits shelves this week. Panosian, I guess, created this series, and this is, to actually go through the synopsis, because it kind of covers it there. Alice first visited Wonderland as a child. Now an adult, it's her only escape from her cold, strange reality. But to go back, Alice needs something stronger than mushrooms. After continuing down a terrible path, Alice is committed to the dreaded asylum. Will Alice ultimately escape from her uncaring family and childhood trauma in Wonderland, or face her demons in reality? So actually, when you talk about like where we try and address things in the first issue, like the asylum stuff, that happens in the first issue. It's a pretty significant development in that first issue. But as we get to know the character pretty quickly, it's like, okay, so this is a sequel to Alice in Wonderland, clearly acknowledged in the synopsis. But as we get to know her, like there's this. I remember seeing the synopsis for this when this was announced and how we were interested in it. I think I called dibs on it before I read a single page of this. Like we'd seen like Alice in Wonderland. Like this is, I think, a pretty long thought theory, like that it's about drug use in some capacity. That story, and to what end, I never really like needed to know much more, because like it's about hallucinogenics or whatever. So okay, but I think here, where like we see heroin is a drug that's used like at the hospital, like it is like I didn't realize that was. Did you know that heroin was apparently used for like colds and shit at one time? Like that's,
Makes
I
sense.
mean, it's like
Have you ever seen a man with a cold? Yeah, if I was a wife, I'd give him heroin too, just to shut him the fuck up.
wow, is that what Meg does with you? Because I swear to God, you're fucking sick here every other week. But anyways,
Strongest bull.
yeah. But anyways, this is about that, and this is about like her abusing drugs to get away from everything that's going on around her. And it's funny because I was going back and rereading this. Like I read it, month to month, as this was ongoing. But when looking back at this in the trade form, seeing some of the stuff in the first issue and knowing what happens later on, it's like, they planted seeds that I kind of didn't catch at first, just because they kind of happened so quickly in the course of it. Because what I was more caught up in is like where we see the parallels drawn from Wonderland to reality, and like the kind of the vibe of the entire story, because like it's in like an older England kind of era, and things are just like they're a little wacky, but at the same time there's a groundedness to it. And it's funny, so like Spallett and Panosian have a similar art style. There is definitely a difference. I feel like the colors is actually where it brings some of the differences out, more so, like because I feel like Dan's line work is a little bit sharper, maybe a little more pronounced, I guess is probably the better word. But that Wonderland stuff has very much a harsher vibe to it, but that's because the colors that Fabiana McCullough uses are much more faded. so it's clear like you're in a different space, but see, like again, like not realizing at the time that Panosian was doing some of the artwork here, just because sometimes I forget or whatever. Like it's, oh, I see very much how, like, you go to Canary to this with the line work and everything. Yes, there are some differences because it's a different world and everything, but I see similarities in some of the edging and whatnot. But I really like the artwork here. It's a lot lighter in the London times with the coloring and everything. And I feel like the line work is a little bit more so too there as well. As for, I'm bouncing around here with all talking about the larger stuff, but the characters that are in the mix here. So we have Alice Lutwidge, of course, Alice. And what's interesting is where we talk about narration, and I can be very critical of how narration is used in a story. Third person narration in comics, not always a big fan of that. Internal monologues can be interesting. It depends on the story that you're doing, and it has to be used in the right manner. Don't mind when you bounce around from character to character either, because I know, like, we see it in Philadelphia, and they've actually used the internal monologue really well recently, over this past arc. But what's done here is we have Kitty and Snowdrop, who are Alice's cats, who, like, in the first issue you see a little bit, and then I don't remember when else you actually see them in the course of the whole story, but they are like color commentators for the entire series. And again, they're kind of like soft and whimsical and everything like that, and I really like what they did there. Like, I don't know where else we've seen that. We probably have somewhere, but it was just using characters that, like, they're there, who they are pretty much off the rip, even though, like, if you don't, like, you don't need to know much about them otherwise than that they're Alice's cats. It adds an odd element to it. But again, this whole thing is very trippy. If I was to describe this book in one word, absolutely, that would be it. You get Dr. Lutwidge, who is Alice's father. He's the royal dentist, and there's a lot that you learn about this character in the course of things. I would just there's a seed that is planted with him, a couple seeds planted with him early in the first issue. I would pay attention to those, and then go forward from there. There's Lorena Lutwidge, who is the mean sister of Alice. There's Edith Lutwidge, who's the nice sister. Morton, who's a janitor at the asylum, who is actually also Alice's drug dealer. Then there's Earl Proud, who is like this. I don't know if he's a noble, like of royal blood or anything, but he's like definitely like a high society kind of guy who is, who seems to have somewhat of a thing for Alice. The family knows him, and the Lutwidges like him quite a bit. And then in the course of this all, I kind of mentioned this before, you see several characters, some who are bigger players than others, thrown into the mix throughout the course of the story, that, like, okay, that person is like we may not see them in Wonderland here, but like that's a Wonderland inspired character. And it's really interesting what they do. And again, it's like it's a commentary on it's like it's a dark story, but not to the point where it's like, it's not, certainly not horror. I wouldn't call it depressing, but it is like talking about trauma and about drug addiction, and some of the shit that was used back in the day that shouldn't have been prescribed to patients. So there's a lot going on there, and it's just, and again, it's like, if you want something like offbeat and weird, like Alice Ever After is absolutely going to be that thing for you. So and to have it be like a sequel to the children's story, like, hey, like, there's a connective line there with the drug use and everything, but it's I think it's kind of funny too.
I can't remember the author for Alice in Wonderland off the top of my head, but he was a weirdo.
Okay.
There was some skeletons in that closet there.
Oh, of course there were. I didn't
Right.
know that, but
I remember way back when we did the solicit, and we read the synopsis that we did, for this particular book, and we both like earmarked this. That sounds really fucking good. And it sounds really unique. It sounds really interesting, and you snagged dibs on it, which is a bummer because I remember really wanting to read it at the time. But that's the beauty of the show, Nicholas, right? Is that it gives us a chance to talk about these books, and I love that we're talking about these two books. I think we had planned this out several months ago that we would talk about Grimm and
yes.
Alice Ever After on Valentine's Day. I love trying to do that.
I don't remember us doing it on Valentine's Day. I remember saying we're going to do it on the same day.
I think I had jokingly said we should do it on Valentine's Day. Not exactly knowing when Valentine's Day was, but maybe that week sort of thing. Love it when a plan comes together. But I do want to read that book very much because that sounds offbeat and fun. And I imagine the pacing on it is pretty good. Like you got through it pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I mean it was an easy read every week. I mean, again, like it's not dense in the terms of the narration. Like every bit of narration is like a little like side like quip thing. And you know what the other thing is too. You probably could have done without the narration from a storytelling standpoint, but I never felt like it was in the way. So I think that says quite a bit about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say like you gotta pay attention because like I know that like you got to deal with anything you're reading, but this book can get like out there and like pull you in different directions, and it's like what the fuck is going on, and you feel like you're Alice by the end of all this. And the ending too, like the plane landed nice. Is nice even the right word there? I don't even want to go there, but the plane landed. I will put it at that. But yeah, you gotta like stay locked in because there are times where you can get lost in it because it's very like it feels all over the place. As much as when I look back at it now, knowing what goes on, it's all right there. It's just the drug use can in the changing and not knowing what Alice is right about and everything or believes and perceives. It's a lot. So yeah, so when you talk about from pacing standpoint, yes, it was well done, but it's like it makes sense for the story that like you have to go back here and there occasionally.
Love it. And for you and for those interested, Grimm is available on Hoopla. You could read the single issues. Issues 1 through 6 are available right now. And they also has the collected trade paperback on there.
Nice.
Volume 1 as well.
I am going to be picking up the trade hard copy because this just sounds so much like my vibe. And then I got the doc stamp of approval, so I know I'm like going to be interested in this in some capacity. So I gotta pick it up. And of course, this one is the Alice Ever After, as I said multiple times. So you guys can pick that one up at your local comic shop this week. If they don't have it, put it in order for it and get your hands on this one. But that is it for us this week, Joe. Probably going to do another main line next week. Hopefully we can string a couple of these together going forward because Lord knows we were inundated with Friarside Chats to start the year.
I'd like to do at least one trade this year.
Yeah, right. Well, so today's 75. Yeah, if we do another one, we can do it. I think I believe we can do it, but we'll see. That remains to be seen. Until next week, Joe. Happy Valentine's Day and stay
same
sexy.
to you and Lauren. You know it. Click.